Hi everyone, and welcome to our channel Rack to Run, where we discuss with industry leaders issues around AI infrastructure and data centers. Joining us today is Sean Farney, Vice President of Data Center Strategy at JLL. So Sean, thank you very much for joining.
Great to be here today. Thanks for having me.
Thank you very much. So Sean, what trends are you seeing in demand for AI-ready data centers across major markets globally?
It is a wonderful time in the industry. We all picked the right place to work because demand is through the roof. The general compounded annual growth rate for the data center space is around 20%, which is impressive. The demand for AI data center space, so that space which can support the GPU compute required to make AI work, is about 39%, so almost double. And what this is resulting in, according to recent JLL research we just published, I think last week, is we see an all-time low in availability of inventory in the Americas. It's less than 3% and trending downward. We see escalating rents that are continuing to climb because of this. And although we see a robust pipeline of data center builds, let's call it 8 gigawatts, about 75% of that's already pre-leased. So great demand, exciting time because of all this new tech. But it is a little bit of a seller's market, and some of the buyers are having difficulty either finding finished inventory or even on the front end, where JLL helps out a lot of the hyperscalers, finding what we call digital dirt, so land with the power to support AI infrastructure.
And Sean, from your perspective, how is generative AI shaping location choices for hyperscalers and also for colocation providers?
Yeah, it's, again, super high demand, right? So for let's say 20 years or so, we've been building data centers all over the place and doing so on what were once 100-acre and 100-megawatt pieces of land. If you look at size and power, and now we look for 1,000 acres and a gigawatt because of the size of these campuses that Microsoft and Amazon and Meta and Google are building. Because the compounding annual growth rate for data created every year is about 23%. So every 4 years or so, because of all these devices we carry around, we double the amount of data in existence. We just need more data centers to accommodate this. So we've been on this building tear for a long time. And what has happened is all the low-hanging fruit has been picked, so to speak. We found all the digital dirt to support data centers. And now we're running out of these large pieces of land with lots of power. And what JLL brokers are doing are working really hard to find these purchasers of data center real estate that have this available power. So we've been building in US NFL cities for a long time. That's where the density of these facilities are. But we're starting to look outside of these tier 1 MSAs, these NFL cities, into places like DeKalb, Illinois, or Frankfort, Indiana, or Fort Wayne, Indiana, Fort Washington, Wisconsin, just to name a few, even in the Southeast, in Louisiana and Mississippi, because of availability of power. We're looking for stranded power, grid-connected power, and or turning to different sources of power on the back end, like natural gas, to provide these high amounts of powers required for data centers. So it's kind of thrown the general site selection process into an altered state. We're continuing to deploy in NFL cities, but now there are these explorer markets, frontier markets, where we do find power, which may become a new data center cluster. We've seen this phenomenon in the past. So rising tides are certainly lifting all ships right now. Anywhere with available power is going to be a target for site selection.
Sean, what are the biggest challenges in building AI-focused data centers at scale? You have just mentioned power as an example, but what other challenges are you seeing?
Yeah, the basis of design, or the assumptions you make when designing and building a data center, the basis of design for an AI exclusive data center are much different than these design parameters we've been using for the last 20 or 30 years. Over time, we've been densifying the cabinets or racks of server equipment, the computers that store all of our data. We've been doing this in kind of a long sloping curve over time. 20 years ago, data centers maybe ran at 3 or 5 or 7 kilowatts per cabinet. This ramps up over time. When I was running data centers for Microsoft, we used a 20 kilowatt per cabinet specification that was very, very high at the time. Now with AI, because of the processor density and what NVIDIA is doing with densifying the processors and consequently increasing their power demand, we are now, for AI-specific storage and compute, we are now designing to a specification that's well above 50 kilowatts per cabinet. Even, the latest GB300 server product line from Supermicro, for example, you're looking at cabinets that are about 140 kilowatts per. So you can get to a megawatt and roughly 7 cabinets, which is amazing. So that has radically changed how we design and build data centers. There is much more dense power. So that has shrunk the size required to run a megawatt or 2 or 10 to a pretty small room. And it's also introduced a new cooling technology, liquid cooling, because liquid is 29 times more thermally effective at removing heat than air is. And the heat loads we're seeing with AI infrastructure because of the dense chip architecture and consequently the servers require this liquid cooling. So we've changed the power design, we've changed the cooling design, and those were already complex, complicated, and implemented at massive scale in complex environments in the data center world. So just in the last 2 years, we've implemented this new basis of design because Wall Street got very interested in AI once ChatGPT grew in acceptance so quickly. And now it's a race to accommodate the next generation of processors. And it's a pretty significant change in how we do data centers, and it's very recent. So there's a lot of creative destruction, as I call it, going on in the industry right now.
That's really interesting. Yeah. And Sean, how are developers trying to balance speed to market with long-term sustainability when building these AI-ready data centers?
Yeah, so it's truly a race now. As mentioned, Wall Street is very interested in what's going on with AI. So the hyperscalers and others involved in the space, when they promise publicly, to the street and to their shareholders that they're going to deliver load, there's some pretty close attention to this. So it has driven urgency and accountability to the build pipelines. And these are things that you can read about when you look at annual reports and 10Ks and other financial statements from companies like Microsoft and Google and others. And you'll hear Satya Nadella say, we're going to spend 85 or 95 billion on AI because that's been committed on paper to the capacity deployment timeline. So it is pushed very, very hard to continue and march along at delivering load, all the while intensifying the need to get to revenue faster. And this is a little bit of a conflict, right? We need to build bigger and more complicated, but we need to do it faster for a bunch of different reasons. So it has really pushed the industry to optimize the supply chain, the building techniques. We are seeing a much greater use of modular concepts in building infrastructure, mechanical and electrical, as well as actual modules or containerized solutions. We're going to see more of that because it is a boon to time to revenue. We're also starting to see from some companies a return to one of the original practices called adaptive reuse, which is reusing assets, industrial assets in particular, paper mills and steel plants and things like that have good bones and have some power already connected that have maybe been repurposed or abandoned, taking those assets, reusing them, which is sustainability from a carbon impact perspective. But it's also sustainable vis-a-vis time to revenue because you can repurpose an existing building. You don't have to build it out and wait for that 12 to 24 to 36 month build cycle. And you can start deploying in a modular fashion into this facility. So there's lots of pressure, a lot of funding, and a lot of interest, including headlines now. Data centers are a current event. I think every week now I see something about data centers because they're part of our national industrial policy. So a lot of eyeballs, visibility, interest, and money driving the industry to find more efficient ways to deploy. And we're rising to the challenge. Some of the smartest people in the business world are in the data center space, and the engineers are the best at managing complex environments and defeating entropy so that we can do things like this that are running out of a data center, and you get your email and you get your Snapchats and you get your Instagrams and all the great tech stuff that's in data centers. We're finding a way to keep up with the constraints.
Yeah, and Sean, taking into account this race to build AI data centers, are you seeing any change in financing or valuation models or not?
I would say the biggest change, and I wish my capital markets colleagues were here to back me up with some graphs and research. I think the biggest change we're seeing, although there's multiple, the amount of merger and acquisition activity is continuing to set new records. So there's so much going on in the space as all the different providers are trying to balance the challenge of scale, going big with a complex product. Also, the general interest from the investment community in the space is unparalleled. I've never seen anything like it. The returns are very, very good. As a real estate asset, it is the top performing from a rent performance perspective over the last 5 years. It's the top performing asset. And we're seeing now that data center investment is considered relatively de-risked or safe money, such that pension funds are investing on the back end in digital infrastructure assets. So it's become a safe and now very well performing asset. So much more activity from the financial community and interest in the asset as an investment vehicle.
Yeah, finally, Sean, what role will secondary or emerging markets play in AI data center growth from your perspective?
It's a great question. We're already seeing it. We talked a little bit about the departure from deployment into the NFL markets. That will continue. Where we find space and power, digital infrastructure, digital dirt in NFL cities, we will continue to deploy data centers there for all the right reasons. We will also continue when we opportunistically find digital dirt with stranded power. We will go to places you may not have heard of yet or soon to become data center clusters, because that's an opportunity to get to revenue faster. The other new influence or variable is this movement from the AI learning phase, building LLMs. That's what the cloud services providers are doing and doing quite well. And they do it in large facility and they batch data. Those facilities are built and designed to do that quite well. As we move into the next phase, which is inference, which is done more in real time. It's done closer to the use case. It's perhaps has some latency restrictions. Let's call it 100 miles or 3 milliseconds. It's a different paradigm of facility, and it doesn't have to be a massive facility. You're running your inference and getting your insights on a smaller data set, perhaps one you own or have built that's not being accessed over the wider cloud service provider. So we're seeing a new emerging trend that may necessitate the building of this new edge AI inference model, which are small sites that are close to enterprises, because every single enterprise in the, let's call it the Fortune 2000, will need to include inferencing in their product sets if they're not doing this already. And there's a really good chance for a bunch of reasons that they're going to have to do it on their own. So either on premise in their existing data center, which is empty because we've been telling them to put everything in the cloud for the last 10 years and there's some stranded power, or out in the parking lot that's a little less utilized these days because change in workforce habits, in a modular solution. So we may see this new class of smaller data center, 8 to 16 cabinets of the latest NVIDIA chipped servers to run inferencing, which would be exciting because it would be a smaller edge-like network of AI facilities that are going to be built to enable the enterprises to productize and monetize AI inferencing. So this is just starting to develop. But again, all of these segments are rising. There's no cannibalization, that the growth continues in the space. So again, it's a great time to be in data centers.
Well, Sean, thank you very much for your time today. Thank you for your insight.
Thanks for having me. Great to share.
And thank you all for watching. And please stay tuned for more conversations on this critical space.